Yesterday, President Trump signed a proclamation and 4 executive orders, including orders aimed at restoring America's fighting force and prioritizing military excellence and readiness. The White House noted the military's clear mission to protect the American people and our homeland. And it said success in this mission cannot be diluted to accommodate political agendas or other ideologies harmful to unit cohesion. Music to a soldier's ears. Well, joining me now to discuss this and more, Congressman Keith Self, who served our country for 25 years before retiring with the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. He is a member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee. He represents the 3rd Congressional District of Texas. Congressman Self, welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to see you.
Great to be here, Tony. Thank you.
So before we get into the executive orders, give us an update there on how things are going with the issues conference with the GOP.
We are having a lot of frank and open discussions because we want to support the Trump agenda. I think across the board, that's what we're discussing. How do we do that? Because the other existential threat, of course, is our $36 trillion in debt. And frankly, going to over 50 trillion if we don't do something over the next 10 years. So the open and frank discussions are happening now, and I believe that we will come to a conclusion, hopefully in the next several weeks. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm getting reports that there is some very frank conversations, and a lot of it does deal with the debt and spending. A lot of the proposals being put forward by the Trump administration obviously requires dollars. And the reconciliation, I think many conservatives I'm hearing hope to be able to cut spending. Do you think that's going to happen?
We have to, Tony. We have to. We cannot continue to drive this country further into debt, to put more debt on our grandchildren, because we already see the bond market starting to discipline us. Congress doesn't control the bond market. The president doesn't control the bond market. The bond vigilantes could raise their ugly head at any time and start disciplining us if we do not control spending. So it's part of the reconciliation equation that we're working on very hard.
Vice President J.D. Vance spoke there today. President was yesterday. The Vice President today. What can you tell us about what he had to share?
J.D. Vance gave an excellent message, and he understands the need to cut. I will tell you, he's very clear. We must cut spending. The government spends 40% more than it did just before pre-COVID days, and I will tell you, that's unsustainable. Yeah. We've got to get somewhere down toward that $2 trillion of savings, because that will take us, one, back to pre-COVID spending, and two, will put us on a sustainable path to start cutting the deficit, which of course bends the curve on the debt over the long term.
You know, I think that makes perfect sense. If you actually look at the numbers and you look at just the mushrooming of federal spending at COVID, just taking it back down to those pre-COVID levels, of course, you've created monetary constituencies with those COVID funds, and they're going to fight tooth and nail to keep them. But you are absolutely right. This is an existential threat to the future of America, and it has to be done. And if not now, I don't think it'll ever be done.
Well, I agree. This is the time when we have the trifecta in the federal government. We must do it now. There are some no-brainer ideas out there. If you're an able-bodied American, you ought to be working. You shouldn't be on the government dole. But there are a plethora of ideas here. We just need to translate those into the budget resolution that will then start the process toward a reconciliation bill.
And come to an agreement, because you don't have many votes to spare to get that across the line as the Republican conference. I want to talk about boldness on behalf of the president. I was thrilled to see that he went back to the same policy that he enacted back in 2016, one that we worked with him to get done, and that was to return our military to focusing on its mission to fight and win our wars, not modeling the latest cross-dressing camouflage that we see with the transgender agenda there. That had to be encouraging to those that have been fighting for the well-being of our military.
This is absolutely necessary. It was perfect tone by the president. We will return the military to lethality, to deterring our adversaries across the world. This was perfect. I will tell you, this will help with recruiting. This will help with training. This will help with morale. This is the way it's done. Leadership makes a difference in the military, and our commander-in-chief demonstrated that leadership yesterday with these executive orders.
Well, he made in his comments to the Republicans last night, he mentioned that just since he took office, he's seen the recruiting numbers have gone up in our nation's military because I think once again people see confidence, a return to common sense. And, you know, for those who join the military, they join for a reason. They join because of the military's mission, and with a military and an administration pushing the military back to that mission, it can only benefit.
Well, absolutely. Our young people want to serve. They want to serve something greater than themselves. They want to be challenged. They want to know that their sacrifice will be honored and will be worth something. And I think that's what they see in President Trump. Our military is going to do that for them. It's going to give them a place to serve something bigger than themselves. This nation is worth saving. This nation is worth defending. This nation is worth protecting. Donald Trump set the military on that course yesterday.
So let me ask you this, Congressman Self. The young people going in, obviously, as you said, they're attracted to this, and most of the ranks, they're there for that reason. But when you get to the higher ranks that have now been basically marinated in this DEI ideology, how's that going? How are we going to do a course correction there?
Well, I think Pete Hegseth has already determined that he's going to make that course correction. But this is very traditional. This is very historic in the United States. Between wars, which we frankly are now because we're in a sustainment in the Middle East today, between wars, we have political generals. We promote those political officers. And frankly, when wartime comes, we have to scrub the ranks. We have to go down into the general officer ranks, sometimes deep. If you remember, Shai Meyer, I think, was promoted from 2 stars to 4 stars to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And I will tell you, that's what's going to happen, either the chairman or the chief of the Army. But I will tell you, that's what's going to have to happen because, frankly, this is historic. This is what we do between wars. So Pete Hegseth has the mission from the president, and I think he will do exactly that, to return our leadership to a warfighting perspective, and those people who will train, equip, and man a lethal military force.
Congressman, you and I have talked about these types of things before. We're elated, excited about most of the policies. I speak for myself. Most of the policies coming forward that are within the framework of the law and moving us back to the rule of law and getting our government back to where it should be. But we saw 4 years ago how quickly that turned with the Biden administration coming in. And so I'm concerned long term about our country, where we see this back and forth, this ideological shift every 4 years. That's unsustainable.
Absolutely. And because we've seen Trump, Biden, now Trump, we've got an example of exactly how not to do it. This is Congress's role, because we need to codify into law a lot of these policies, because, as you say, the next president could undo a lot of what Trump is doing now. The only way around that is to codify it into law so that we don't have competing EOs every 4 years.
Right. Has that been discussed? Have you and your colleagues been discussing how we can take these and basically preserve them going forward by making them statutory?
Yeah, a lot of those discussions are going on in the chairman of the various committees. This is an ongoing discussion, and I think we will probably get a long way toward that once we get past the reconciliation.
Well, I hope so, because we cannot sustain that whiplash like that. It's not good for our country, and it doesn't strengthen us on the international scene either. Congressman Keith Self, always great to see you. Thanks so much for stepping out and joining us today.
Thank you, Tony.